Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast with Jay Gordon Duncan. If you're wondering why the J, the answer is I'm not a bagpipe player. And if that joke doesn't make any sense, I encourage you to check out episode 0, where I explain that joke as well as the purpose of the This Is Gonna Hurt podcast, where we talk about faith, family, fitness, finances, and sometimes fun. Well, friends, thanks so much for joining us again. I always have to start by saying thank you. I appreciate the likes and the comments and the shares from last week's episode. And if you are watching us, you can see once again, I'm joined by the CACS community, which is a faith-based creative mastermind that meets each Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in joining us, just send me a message. You can find me on all the socials. But the CACS community gathers once a week. And we have writers, authors, editors, musicians, just a wonderful group of people. And so whenever the topic of the podcast coincides with something with the group, I like to record those so that we can get the episode out there and just keep that up. Remind you guys, I'm inching closer to episode 500, which is insane. That's 5.5 years worth of consistency, which is amazing. Still not quite sure. I'm gonna try to do something big and celebrate. But I'm putting that together. I see if I can get some of my rockstar buddies to join us for something and just have a good time. But as always, I'm very thankful for all of you guys and your faithfulness. So here's where we're going today. As you guys know, I've published books, I've put out courses over the past few years, and this group specifically has done the same. And many of you who watch and listen are amazingly creative as well. And you've put a book out on Amazon, or you've published a course, or even a simple blog post that you put out on your page, and it meant something to you, and you felt like it had an impact, and you wanted it to get a second chance. And so the question is, well, how do you reignite interest in something that might be 2 years old? And it can be as simple as just sharing it on your Facebook page, but we all know that just a single post might die in the algorithm, because you might post at 8 o'clock a.m. and the people on the West Coast are not going to see it at all. And so again, I don't discourage you from doing that, but that's different than launching a campaign to reignite interest in a past effort. And again, so many of you guys have done just wonderful jobs of just every detail, editing, asking people to look at it, peer review, illustrating, making sure every single thing is right. And I think most of us have the experience of doing that, publishing it, and not getting the response that we want, or getting a tremendous response, and some circumstance reminds you, you know what, that might be relevant for today. So what I want to do is I'm going to break my pattern, not 3 steps, not 5 steps. You guys worry about me. I'm going 4 steps today. You know, I don't usually do anything that's in 4s. It's usually 3s. But I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't get it down to 3. But they don't all start with the same letter. My father would be disappointed that I don't have alliteration for you today. So here it is. Here's my 4 steps to help you reignite interest in something that you have posted or published before. And I'm going to start with step 1 that should offend some of you. And if it doesn't offend you, then I'm not making the point correctly. Okay? But so before I give you the step, and I've given you that precursor, here it is. If you've done all this work, all the passion, hours, maybe even hundreds of hours, for some of you, many, many years, and then you published it and you didn't get the response, step 1 is incredibly important. So the first step to reigniting interest in something that you've done is to remind yourself that the marketing is as important as the creating. That the marketing is as important as creating. Because you might write the most beautiful song ever written and no one in the world may know it. You know, if you say, I don't care at all about sales or receptivity, I understand that and I respect that. And you might say, if it only impacts one person, I'm happy. And again, I absolutely respect that. But if your desire is to make a broader impact with whatever you've written or created, then the marketing is as important as the creation. And from my viewpoint, owning a marketing company, I see this all the time. People wonderfully spend all this time in creation, but their marketing is almost an afterthought. And I get it. It's a completely different skill set. They're not the same. They're not. Creating and marketing, 2 different things, because then you go, I don't know how to market it. True. But you probably didn't know how to publish a book either when you got started. And so if your desire to make an impact, if you have the desire to make an impact, and you're looking at something that you published maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago that didn't make the impact you want, then you've got to remind yourself, step one, that the marketing of that is as important as the creation of that product. Because if you don't hold that mindset, you're not going to be able to reignite interest in it. Because more than likely, you're going to have to do the marketing. Now, some of us might be fortunate enough to hire a company or work with someone who enables that product to get out there. And if that's affordable and they can give you a return of your money that's worthwhile, go for it. But for most folks who are indie or self-published in any realm, so much of the marketing falls on our shoulders. And so my encouragement before you even publish is to begin thinking about what your marketing is going to be. But if you want to look back and you're like, you know what? Now, I'll give you an example. Today is the 3-year anniversary of my publishing How to Attract Clients. And that's been a great book for me. And now I just give it away as sort of like a really fancy business card. But when I published it, it had a great bump. Like I got great sales out of it. Now I can look back right now and I can say, you know what? That book has relevance for today. If I wanted to get it back out, I would have to say to myself, well, then marketing that right now is going to have to be just as important as the time I put in to create it. And if you don't have that mindset, you're going to be discouraged. Because listening, creating is frustrating, marketing is frustrating. It's even more frustrating to put all those hours into it and feel like no one's receiving it. So first of all, guys, if you got that in mind, you're like, I created this thing and I want to get it back out there. Mindset starts first because everything happens with mindset. If you tell yourself, okay, the marketing of that is going to be as important as the creation of it, then you are one step closer. Okay? All right, step 2. Make it fresh. Make that old thing that you've done, that prior work, make it fresh. I would offer 2 ways you can make it fresh without going into too many details. Now, if you have a book published on Amazon and you want to re-release it, you need to add about 20% new content. If you're going to release version 2.0 or something like that, you need to add about 20% new content. And so if you can make it fresh that way. You can say, you know what, since I've written that, things have happened that are relevant for that book. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add an extra 30 or 40 pages, or some folks go add 30 or 40 pages of study guides or 30 or 40 pages of references. But if you're going to make a fresh re-release, typically you need to add about 20% new content because you're asking some people to buy it a second time. Or you're asking interested parties to say, well, there's something new going on with this prior product. People may have seen it and said, you know what, I didn't buy it, but now there's something new about it. And you got to be specific. Now with 20% new content and then let people know. That's one way to make it fresh. Here is the slightly easier way to make it fresh. Same content, same release, new context. New context. So my book, I'm going to keep using that same example just for consistency. If I wanted to re-release or relaunch How to Attract Clients, I could do that right now by targeting the real estate industry and saying, guys, right now, attracting clients is more difficult. You've got a high interest rate, you have low inventory, and you have a lot of competition. Now, right now, more than ever, this book is needed for the real estate industry. I haven't changed the book in one way at all, but there's a brand new context for it. Now, for each one of you, that's different. Maybe a little bit easier for a business book. But if you're thinking spiritual matters, very easy to think, how would this book apply to something spiritually that's going on right now? To pick on Ron a little bit, every hurricane season, that guy can re-release his book on Hurricane Ian because it's relevant. And that old book becomes fresh. So again, you don't have to rewrite the book or create 20% new content. That's helpful. But if you can find a new context for it, you get a reason to get it back out there. And we often forget that. We might see something, you're like, oh, I wrote about that one time. Well, then tell people. Like, bring it back into people's minds. There's reason classical literature always stays relevant because those cultural issues keep coming up and over again. You might read the Scarlet Letter and you're like, it's relevant for today. You can read 1984, like, it's relevant for today. Those books continue over and over again because they continue to have cultural relevance. And teachers professors, and anyone else makes a great point of talking about how those books have meaning for today. So for you, if you want to get an old work, an old effort, and you want to have reignited interest, you can do it in two ways. There's a bunch of ways, but for today, two ways. You can add about 20% new content. Again, you can do that with study guides. You can do it with an expanded edition. You can do it with references, or you can make a new context for it. That book written then has relevance today for this reason. All right, we're halfway there. Hang in there, guys. So the first one is you got to remind yourself that the marketing is as important as the creation. Second, you've got to make it fresh. You got to give it a new context. You've got to give it more content. Number 3, okay? And so I want you to treat this older book just like a new release with a release date. You don't have to do anything on Amazon. Because honestly, folks, people aren't going to be like, oh, it's released today. I wish we had so many people looking at my books online that they were like, oh, it's already out. But if I said, hey, guys, November 1st, we're going for a brand new release of How to Attract Clients on November 1st. I don't have to change anything, nothing at all. The release is the release of the marketing, guys. We're going to make a big push November 1st. How to Attract Clients. Basically, treat your old book as a new release and put a date. Put a date on the calendar. Just let everybody, you can even be honest with them, like, guys, this book's been out forever, but we're making a big push for November 1st. November 1st, is going to be How to Attract Clients Day, November 1st. Essentially, make a new release date for a book that you've already published. Now, if you want, you can go to Amazon and you can suspend sales from it. You can pause the book and then re-release it on that day if that's what you'd like to do. No problem with that. Amazon will allow you to pause the book and then re-release it, or you can just leave it there and pick a date and then treat it like a normal release where you're doing a build up to it, anticipation for it, reviews for it that you've had before, and you treat it just like the release of a book. Treat it exactly the same way, but you put a date on the calendar and you build anticipation for it. Because that way, when November 1st gets here, it's like it's a How to Attract Clients release day. And then you're pointing everybody, go, go, go. If you want to pause it on Amazon, you can, but more likely, I'll be honest with you guys, you really don't have to. Most folks are not perusing our Amazon page as much as we'd like for them to. So go for it. Go for it. Release date, treat it the same way. So 1, you got to treat the marketing the same as the creation. 2, you got to provide fresh, new content, or you've got to add 20% more, or you've got to give